Hi, everybody. Reporting to you from southeast Ecuador with my half finished cabin behind me. I want to talk today about land ownership at Fruit Haven, the legalities and long term risks and other issues. Because somebody was talking to me recently about the land ownership at Fruit Haven, and they were suggesting that the way we were doing it was bad, that we shouldn't have multiple people as percentage owners on a title. We should just buy a big farm, divide it up into like 30 or 20 individually titled properties, and sell them. And they were explaining why that was better. And I started asking this person, well, what their needs were, what they were actually looking for in terms of their buying land. And I suggested that maybe it was just what we were offering wasn't meeting their needs, what they were specifically looking for, which is what they wanted 100% ownership of one single property that was theirs. And sometimes I recommend that to people. Obviously, what we do at Free Haven is a little bit different, and I'll tell you why. We want a little bit of control over who buys in, who's a part of Fruit Haven. We want some semblance of control, otherwise, the place could kind of turn into Vilcabamba. Your neighbor could be some random guy who smokes cigarettes all day and has loud barking dogs and slaughters pigs constantly in his yard. Is that something that should be Fruit Haven? I don't think so. That would be pretty annoying. But it could be a part of Fruit Haven if we would buy like a 40-hectare farm, divide it up into 40 lots, and sell them off to people. Because then we really don't really have any control. I mean, we still kind of do, but we can encourage people to only sell to those who are approved by the other owners. But it probably wouldn't end up working out that way in the long run. So when we have, say, 12 names on a title and they each own a certain percent of the property, it holds people together in a different way. It kind of provides us an incentive to cooperate. Obviously, with both ways of doing it, there's risks. With the first way of doing it, you have a risk that it turns into like a really touristy place with no moral values anymore and no shared values. It's not really a community anymore. I think that Fruit Haven would no longer be a community if we did that. In 10 years, if we right now divided up all the property into 30, 40 individually titled lots for each owner, I think in 10 years there would probably be no more Fruit Haven. I think the way we're doing it now, there's a very good chance that in 10 years there will still be a Fruit Haven. Fruit Haven is now over 5 years old, by the way. So a bunch of people all in the same title, a percentage of ownership is specified, and then we have a separate private contract between the owners that details the land use. What are the common elements? What are the private elements? Those are terms you'll see in horizontal property contracts with condominiums and stuff like that. The driveway and the swimming pool is a common element that everyone has to pay for in their HOA fees, and each individual condo is owned by that person, for example. So here, the individual lots are each person has the rights to use that lot. They own, say, 5% of the property. They get, say, a 1 hectare lot or whatever, and the contract between the owners specifies that. And then, of course, we have a road at Free Haven, multiple private roads actually, and then we have water systems and various infrastructure and community areas. So do we charge taxes like a government? Some could describe what we do as taxes, but obviously there are some differences. For example, every year the group of owners will have a discussion in an email thread and be like, what things do we need to do? Do we want to do a lot of big projects in the property this year, or do we want to keep it low and cheap? Do we want to just do basic maintenance? Maybe we need some road improvement in this area that's going to cost $1,000, and they'll pass a budget. And then that money will be spent on the things that it says in the budget. So say they want to spend $2,000 maintaining the road, $1,000 maintaining the community area, various other things, various other shared expenses. And that's how it happens. And so far it works. And we don't use coercion, we don't force people. But it's kind of like everyone who lives here sees around them that this money is exactly getting spent on the place that they live. It doesn't feel like taxes where you're forced to give a percent of your paycheck to some bureaucrat somewhere. And you see on the news every single day how they're wasting the money, stealing the money, so much corruption, using it, sending $4 billion a year to Israel for military aid and sending millions of dollars to all these countries he's never even heard of. You know for a fact all your money is being wasted on, the vast majority of your money is being wasted on ridiculous things. The roads around you are in terrible condition. Whereas at Fruit Haven, you kind of voluntarily enter an agreement with other owners. You have an incentive to cooperate because you're all in the same land title. You want things to work out. And the people who are here managing the spending of that money you see them every day, and you see how that money is being spent. And those people also have an incentive for things to work here because they live here as well. So there's a big incentive. Everything's a lot more decentralized, a lot more local the money that you're putting in as your, shall we say, taxes. Say someone who owns 5% of a Fruit Haven property might pay $400 one year for the maintenance of that property, and it's agreed upon by the other owners. And yeah, and they see the excavator improving the road, and they see some improvements getting done at the community house, and they see various other things happening. So and obviously we have other money coming in because there's a lot of tourists that come here, people that want to stay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and they rent rooms at Fruit Haven at some of the community houses, some of the private houses. And it's kind of cool. Sometimes someone might stay at Fruit Haven 1 community area for a month, and then at Fruit Haven 2 community area for a month. Then they go travel the coast in Vilcabamba and eat a bunch of junk food. And then when they start feeling kind of sick and need to detox, they come back to Fruit Haven and rent at Fruit Haven 3 for a couple months. And so it's kind of cool. So back to, what was I talking about? Yeah, the taxes and the maintaining the community. So, but in terms of actually having control over who buys into the property, obviously, we don't like to force anybody with anything, but what crazy person in their right mind would buy into a title with 10 other people they don't know, knowing those 10 other people have a community there that they probably wouldn't accept them? They would have to be a very stupid, unrealistic person to do that. So while there's certainly a chance that someone could sell their share of a jointly owned Fruit Haven property to some random-ass person without anyone else's permission, sure, legally, we don't want to force anyone not to sell what's rightfully theirs to sell, but they have such a huge incentive because they're going to get a higher value for it selling to somebody who wants to be part of the project. And that person's much more likely to buy it knowing that they have been accepted by the other owners, approved by the other owners. They send in a questionnaire. Sometimes we have a Skype call with them. And sometimes, a lot of times, they're people we already know as they'll come down here and spend some time here. So that's kind of how it works. It's just, there's no easy solution. You can't make everything work perfectly, and there's a lot of different ways for forming communities. A lot of community is just one person owns a big piece of land, and they try to make that work. Other times, it's a trust or an organization. Some of the most successful long-term intentional communities in the world are communities where there's multiple community businesses. I'm not sure how their land ownership works out, but there's multiple community businesses, and everyone who's at the community takes part in one of the community businesses. They're able to make money for themselves and for the community. So obviously we hope to have a thriving economy at Fruit Haven as well, because a lot of people want to live here, but then they don't have money. I didn't have very much money when I came down here to Fruit Haven. I still don't have very much money. Some people are apparently convinced that I was a Bitcoin millionaire. I never have been a Bitcoin millionaire. I wish I was, but no, I'm not hiding that. So I came down to Ecuador with just a few $1,000s of savings, and I sold coconuts, and I taught English online, and did a bunch of random crap for money when I was at Terra Frutis, and yeah, you don't need to save up thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to come down here, although it certainly helps if you want to buy land. Now, having individually titled properties, lots, rather than a jointly owned property, still you can do certain things, some agreements between owners about not selling to some random-ass idiot, but it's much harder to keep that in check. When it's legally individual properties. It's much harder to, shall I say, exert control. Because let's be honest, you're always trying to exert your control and manipulate things in your life. You want things to be a certain way in your life. You do what you need to do to get there. So obviously, in trying to figure out how to form the community and the legal situation in the community, we are thinking about how can we use our force, so to speak, to try to make this a community of like-minded people. Obviously, we want it to be a community of like-minded people because we know, it's a fact, communities made up of non-like-minded people do not function. They cease to function. There's just too much arguments and drama. There's no glue holding people together. The joint title is one part of the glue, one ingredient of the glue that holds us together at Fruit Haven. But the shared ideals that we all have is another important ingredient of the glue. And that's not to say we all believe the same thing on all topics. We disagree on a number of things, but there's certain certain ideas of health and permaculture and this and that we do have in common, and we're discovering other things that we may have in common. Short break to admire my unfinished house and the pile of trash and wood over there. Hopefully it looks better in a few days. Getting it done. Okay, so I guess that's all I have to say about this video. I was going to say one last genius thing, but I totally forgot what it was. So I'll see you all in the next video.